All right, all things Red Wings. This is Angry Audio Podcast, and when I say all things Red Wings, we have a lot to cover. This is the season preview. 25-26 is on the line for the Detroit Red Wings, and there's been a lot of talk over, I would say, the past 3-4 years with the Yzer-plan and the team kind of what the crowd sees as underperforming for the amount of time we've been in this rebuild. So the question, Aaron, by the way, Aiden, this is Aaron. Question, Aaron, is are they there yet? Is there something that they need to do to get over that hump to satisfy everybody that's watching these games and turning them off dejected year after year? Well, what is the next step for the fan to expect this year?
Yeah, I think the obvious thing here is that when you have gone to the playoffs 25 years in a row, you now have a really high bar. And it creates this unrealistic expectation that, oh, it'll just take 4 or 5 years to get back there. The thing is everybody ages out. You know, if the Red Wings could keep, I don't know, Nicholas Lidstrom forever and Pavel Datsyuk and Hank Zetterberg, then damn, they've really got something, right? But that's not what happened. So really what we're looking for, I think, if you ask me my opinion, is they need those draft picks, the good ones that we're getting now, to come up and fill in spots on the team and grow with the team and be true NHL impact players. That's what we're looking for. And so this season, and this is kind of a preview of sorts, what we're looking for is these draft picks who are now on the roster to really start helping the team, because that's the talent you're looking for.
Yeah. So when you're watching the Yzer-plan unfold, and you have been watching this really closely over the past couple of years, and this is a point of hot contention among Detroit Red Wings fans, among Leaf fans. There's fans all over the league that are looking at Detroit and going, what the hell is going on? At some point, you had multiple goaltenders signed. There's weird signings happening. What is the plan that you see? And you're very adamant about staying the course and holding the line for Steve Yzerman. So back that up a little bit. Give me a little bit of emphasis on why it's so important.
Oh, it's so important. And I feel like Yzerman sort of showed his hand back in the day, because early on, he had Blashill as the coach, right? I mean, not that he had him, but that's who was coach. And everyone kept saying, you should get a better coach. But he was like, why am I going to switch for a different coach now when we're still in a rebuild? Like, why waste the money? Why waste the time? And the same thing goes for all these other players. So if you noticed a player like Wallman, well, Jake Wallman gets sent away for nothing. In fact, I think they had to pay to get him to leave, right? And people are like, why would you get rid of that guy? He was an energy player. He was great on offense. But see, the problem was he wasn't so good in the defensive zone. And if you look at what the Yzer-plan is, it's build from within, and it's also look at the stats. Because when it comes down to stats, you have players who might be a fan favorite, but they're not going to change things for the better. In fact, they're probably a liability. So if you have a guy who's a liability on defense, Yzerman's probably not going to want to keep him. And I can hear already people yelling, what about Justin Hall? Well, let me tell you something. Be patient, because as we go, you're finding out that he is letting go of players that are not helping. And that's what I mean by when you see draft picks coming in and finally becoming NHL ready, that's what we're looking for. When those guys are there and you don't have to worry about a Justin Hall or you don't have to worry about a Jake Wallman. Now we're talking about the exciting future and these new hot players that are coming in.
So one of the things I've noticed, a lot of people tend to forget about hockey. They tend to forget about their favorite team. Is it's not just this guy, this GM, that has had a massive influence on your team, especially you're a couple years removed from a guy like, I don't know, Ken Holland, who is infamous for making some of the weirdest decisions that look good on paper, but in practice, when when you actually put that on the ice, it's horrendous. What's it been like for Stevie making these decisions to really dismantle the Ken Holland vision and put his own forward?
Yeah, and the word on the street, the word from the fans really becomes that Ken Holland was a great guy when the Wings were on top, when they had the players, they had the money, they didn't have to worry about a cap. He was great at managing that team. As soon as that slide happened, they were losing Datsuk, they were losing Lidstrom. That's where he just wasn't so good. And I can also say, you look at the draft picks. The draft picks just only got worse. And so the great thing is Yzerman comes in, and to be honest, I shed a tear when he was announced as the new GM. I'm a big believer in Yzerman. I'll say that without any hesitation. But when he comes in, there was a lot of respect between the two men. They'd known each other for a long time. But while he respects, Ken Holland, Yzerman knows better about how to run this team from ground to sky. Because right now they need to grow. And so you'll notice that the players that were drafted before under Ken Holland, a lot of them were not so good. I mean, look at the last one he made. The last impact player that they were hoping to get was Philip Zadina. Now, they chose Zadina, and that was with Quinn Hughes on the board. Quinn Hughes played for Michigan. He's from the Hughes family. They're all fantastic hockey players. How the hell did this happen? If you look at any polls now, Quinn Hughes ranks usually at number one or number two alongside Cale Makar for best defenseman in the league. And he's arguably one of the top 10 players at times in the league. So I don't know what you can say except Ken Holland was a failure towards the end. And now we have Yzerman who's saying, we're going to really look at our picks. And I don't have to name the names. We're going to get into them here in a bit. But there are names that he's chosen, some of them where people rolling their eyes, pulling their hair and saying, what are you doing? And we're seeing now those players, Yzerman knows what he's doing.
So let's actually step back here and we'll get into the players. We'll get into the day one lineup. But let's take a look at where the Detroit Red Wings stood last year and what you kind of expect to see from them, and not taking the other teams into consideration. We'll cover that off in a little bit, but where do you see Detroit taking a step forward here? Where do you see from a team basis them moving towards their final goal this year?
Well, I guess I probably have a different expectation than most other people. I'll say out front here that I don't know if they finished too differently than they did the last year. But what I'm looking at is how consistent are they? Last year we saw some runs, especially later in the spring, where it seemed like, wow, they just can't win a game. So what I'm looking for now is that it's not like they're going to take the whole Atlantic Division by storm, but what they're going to do is they're going to hold their own. They're going to look a lot more solid. I am actually hopeful that they can win more games and they can get into the playoffs now. But that really depends on some different factors. We're talking about team health. We're talking about, are these guys that look NHL ready? Can they do it game in, game out? And it's really interesting to me too, because McClellan talks about gas tanks. So, it's not so much, does this guy have enough muscle on him now? Is he big enough? Is he strong enough? But it's also, does he have the gas tank to keep up? How many minutes can these guys have in a game?
I see a lot of kind of teams working towards building the next big thing through free agent signings, which hasn't gone well for Detroit over the past couple of years. I just want to point that out. It's been a little bit rough for them building through free agency. Is this approach going to get us close? Because I need to know right now, when do you pull the chute? When is the Yzer-plan got like that late stage parachute ready to go, that is like, oh crap, maybe we need to actually kind of shift and maybe Yzerman moves off to another pasture and fans feel better about that? Where's the point that we move off of this?
Yeah, so I personally am on board with the Yzer-plan. And so what I'm looking for are, they brought in players, and we're going to get into them, for this upcoming season here, who they are, the new guys. But it's bringing those guys on board and seeing them grow. So the Yzer-plan doesn't happen overnight. It's a long, long journey. And it's finally starting to pay off, I feel like. But what we're going to be looking for again is this plan working? Because are these draft picks as good as we think they might be? It's going to be proofs in the pudding. So if at the end of the season we see that a couple of these new prospects didn't quite work out like we hoped, maybe if we say Branzeg Nygaard and Finney, maybe they're just not playing as well as we'd hoped, as well as they looked early on in these preseason in the games there, then maybe we have to readjust. But I mean, right now, I think you have to let it play out. And you have to also realize that this Atlantic division they're in, it's a tough one.
Yeah, I've been watching a few teams. There's going to be a lot of surprises in the Atlantic Division this year. I think the crown is changing heads, and I even put Florida kind of in that conversation. I think there's going to be a little bit more of a power struggle as some of the younger teams are moving forward. It's going to be fascinating. Now, speaking of younger teams, let's just dive in. Take us through some of the top young players that are making the team this year and what you need to see from them.
Well, let's start with Emmett Finney because he somehow made the team. He was a 2023 draft pick. In fact, he was a seventh rounder. Now, Detroit has a history of picking late round picks who end up being monsters out there, being geniuses. But really, with Emmett Finney, what I saw is I saw a guy that came in and said, "You're going to have to drag me out of here. I am going to work my ass off and you're going to see it. I'm not going to be afraid. I'm not going to be a hesitant guy out there. I'm going to go for it." And so between his engine and his intent and everything else, I mean, the guy just really impressed everyone. And I think they were ready to try and find a reason to send him back. I mean, he's a seventh rounder, right? But no, he proved himself. Another guy is Branzeg Nygaard. I think Branzeg Nygaard was the one guy out of the prospect pool that people were pretty sure was going to make the team. He's already got the size. He's got great instincts. He plays both ends of the ice with intelligence, and he's always putting himself in the right spot. And we saw that with his goals in the preseason. So there's a lot of hope there. But the one big surprise for me ended up being Axel Sandin Pellikka, because if you ask me, he's going to be one of those all-time greats. I think his intelligence, his abilities are really going to set him apart from a lot of the other players over time. But I didn't know if he would make the team this year or not. But when you watch, he's very competent out there. He's already got a lot of confidence. I mean, look, all these guys have things to work on. But right now, get him in there and get him NHL ready by putting him in the NHL now.
Yeah, and you're seeing like some veterans like JVR, Mason Appleton being kind of plugged in there. And I can't express how much they play the role of warm body. They are people that are slotting in. Yes, they're examples for the team. These guys are going to go out there and they're going to give you the best that they're 38 or 30. How old is JVR now? I think he's 36.
Yeah, well, I mean, let's be honest. Those guys, they are brought in to kind of make sure that they have those positions filled. But there are no guarantees. I mean, we don't know if someone's going to get injured. One of the things that we're waiting to see also is Finney, Branzeg Nygaard, and Sandin Pellikka. Well, are they going to be able to make it through the season okay? So if they get an injury or something. So, I mean, the way I look at it is those guys are brought in. They know how to play the game. You've got them. We're gonna see what lines they're on. I mean, they're already saying what lines they're on, but they already put Finney on the top line with Larkin and Raymond. I mean, when you look at that, you just go, wow, this guy was a seventh rounder 2 years ago, and now he's on the top line. So get ready for surprises. You already talked about that, and you mentioned Florida. I think that's what we're going to see. We already saw not too long ago the Rangers, who appeared to be on an ascent to the top, suddenly fell apart. A lot can happen in hockey, and you can't just look at the players on the team and go, here's where they're headed.
Yeah. So day one, you kind of mentioned the outline of the team and the lines. What do you see kind of jumping out at you as a day one lineup? It's been announced for Detroit, right? I believe it was due yesterday or the day before. What do we have? What's the surprise on that lineup if you can find one?
Yeah, no, it's honestly having Finney on the top line, and I love that idea because look, we could slot in another player in there, an older veteran, but when you look at Larkin, you look at Raymond, you look at guys who are pretty quick, they think quick, they move fast. You want to put in youth with them, I think. And I think Finney's a great choice. And I love that McClellan's on the team now. He's like a no BS guy, but he's also very personable. And I also like that the word is that when he's coaching, unlike the former guy, Derek Lalone, that McClellan says, hey, if we're down, we got to claw our way back. No one's, don't just settle for being safe. No, you need to go get that win. So he pushes guys to step on the gas and make things happen. You know what you're doing, so go out there and make it happen. And I love that.
Yeah, and we all know where Detroit finished last year. We all know for some it was a highly disappointing finish to the season. I'm actually curious, before we move forward, how disappointed were you with the Detroit Red Wings last year and their finish?
Well, it was disappointing. I mean, if you're a Red Wings fan, you see how it all finishes up. It's upsetting. There's no getting around that. But in the back of my mind, it was always Yzerman has a plan, and we're going to see when these younger guys come up. I think it's amazing they've had 3 players make the roster who were just prospects. So I'm already seeing a major change. I don't know if you looked at social media, but it wasn't just me. In fact, I saw a lot of people who normally were dogging on the Wings posting memes, those little gifs from different shows like The Office, where it's like, it's happening. And that's what it is. They're bringing in players who are going to be somebody's, and now they're going to have a chance to prove it, and they can help carry this team over that line.
Jiff, huh? You're really just gonna lay that out there, and you're just not okay. All right, we know who you are. That's fine. That's your
I mean, it's
political
got to be out
statement
there,
for
right?
this
You can't
show.
just say we're going to trade for one guy and he's going to change the team. No, you've got to bring in these guys from the draft because they'll be a lot cheaper. I mean, just look at what's happened lately with the cost of players who are signed. Kaprizov, right, for the Wild. I mean, that's a ton of money. There's still a cap, no matter how high it goes. There's a cap.
Yeah, and then Connor comes and smacks everybody in the mouth. So going forward with this season, your nemesis in the standings, you've got Montreal, you've got Ottawa, Buffalo. I don't think anybody has to worry about, but there is also some from the other division that you kind of have to fight off if you're looking to be one of the bubble teams in the wild card spot. Where do you see Detroit as they face off? Probably the biggest concern I'd have to say is the Montreal Canadiens right now. Where do you see them kind of eyeing up with them?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't, but like what, 2 years ago that it was Montreal and Detroit who were playing toward the end of the season and trying to get into the postseason. And while Detroit didn't make it, it was interesting to see them beat Montreal in those games. And they were phenomenal games. That was back when Wallman and Gostisbehere were there. But yeah, I see it as they could very well finish in a very similar spot. I almost expect, if I'm being honest, for them to go up one spot more. But see, the thing is Detroit's goal isn't just to make the playoffs. They want to be the best team out there. And let's be honest, that's not happening this season. They're not going to be the best team out there. It's just impossible, right? But I do think that we'll see one of those other big teams fall down a notch or two, another one kind of slip a bit. So it's not just that Detroit's going to be a little better, that they have better coaching, that they have some new players that are going to really ignite that team. It's also that some other teams are going to take a step back. Now, I don't expect that with Montreal at all. And I also don't expect it with Ottawa because Ottawa has been working on their roster for quite a long time. They've had to jump on Detroit. So it's really going to be interesting to see how they fare in the Atlantic Division. But I am hopeful that they move up at least one notch, can get into the playoffs, and finally get their foot in there.
Yeah. So when you talk about teams slipping back, um, I think year after year, you've had Tampa, you've had Florida, you've had Toronto, you've had Boston. Even Boston's already started to show their age, and I think they're pretty much finishing last year where they're going to finish this year. They may resurge, they may have some of that old man kind of strength kind of kick back in, but I think they're going to need a rebuild process. Who else do you see moving back from those top three, and who do you see maybe taking those places? That is a very interesting question when you look at that division, because it is the strongest division in all of hockey as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's definitely up there. It's in the top two, and I don't know with the expectations for the team, and I think they're rising again given the reaction of the fans. But I really feel like we're going to see a team slip back. Now, who's that going to be? Here's the funny thing: I came on here prepared to talk about the Lightning because I thought the Lightning might take a little bit of a slip back, but not a major one, but a little one. And it's funny because if you actually look up ESPN, they're talking about how Lightning are one of the favored teams this year. And
Yeah.
I guess that's what they're saying. But I look at it as how long have they been on top? And eventually, and they're already saying that about Florida, how Florida might take a step back this year. So we'll see what happens. But I do think we'll be surprised, just like we were surprised with the Rangers last year.
Yeah, it's so I don't necessarily see Florida falling and tumbling down to.
No.
I mean, they've got some key players that are out through injury right now, mostly because of their little tussle with the Tampa 2 games in a row.
Man.
That was just yeah. I was let them die on the battlefield, guys. The less there are of them, the better chance every other team has.
Yeah.
But I see them possibly struggling throughout the regular season, but with Florida, you can always guarantee that they're going to hit the playoffs with a stride, and they're going to make you eat their glove in the process. I do see Tampa struggling this year as a kind of in the same way that they did last year. I think Toronto's the big wild card right now in that division, and I don't think anybody knows where they're going to be. What happens when you delete one of the top point getters from your team without refilling that at all? Replacing through the aggregate if you want to be a Billy Bean supporter. I'm not exactly sure. Toronto's going to be in the top three of their division. I can almost guarantee they're going to have a wild card spot. They're still going to be good, but who's taking the place there? You only have Montreal, Ottawa, Detroit. Buffalo isn't even in this division.
I'm not a big believer in one guy changing the team. I'll just be honest. The whole idea that Toronto is going to somehow slip just because Marner's gone doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know if you see it, but sometimes during the regular season, a big player will go out and the team will rally. They'll be like, oh, we have to make up for this. There might already be enough goals within the talent they still have to make up for a lot of it. Maybe they're better defensively. So it can be, handled no problem, I think. It's just, will it work out? Because we talk about the pressure on Detroit. I mean, no one has pressure like the Toronto team does. Toronto has not won a cup in many decades. They put together some fantastic teams over the years, and they haven't gotten the job done. And I know that they're the ones that believe that we're going to be the team that comes back and gets the cup for Canada again. And so that pressure is always there. Everybody talks about it.
Yeah, God help us. It's not going to be Edmonton. Yeah, that team hasn't even come close.
Oh, man. You talk about a fantastic team, but they can't seem to cross the line. There's a part of me that wonders if they're the Buffalo Bills of the NFL in the 90s, where they can always get to the dance, but yeah, they're not.
Yeah, we'll talk about them in a second because I am kind of curious about revisiting with kind of a new lens this year. But the Ottawa Senators, we slightly touched on them. We've kind of glazed over everybody else and where we kind of see them going to be. We've got some predictions we've got to do in a second here, but the Ottawa Senators, not doing a whole bunch in the postseason or in the offseason to bolster their lineup, but they also had a really good young team going into the playoffs last year that kind of hit the brick wall of the Toronto Maple Leafs. What do you see them being the team to beat for that playoff spot now, or is it Montreal?
No, I mean, in all honesty, I think it's going to have to be Detroit's going to have to really look at Ottawa, and that's still going to be their best team to try and launch over. I don't know about Montreal, so I mean, it's all just opinions, right? But I still think Ottawa is still growing. Detroit's growing, but I would argue that Detroit's prospect pool, their coaching, their management, I really believe in it. So I have a feeling they're going to be able to make up some of that ground, but we're going to find out this season.
Okay, so before we get off the Atlantic, Tell me your dark horse for the division. Who's your dark horse to do really well? But I also want to ask who's going to win the division. This, and we will revisit this as we get closer to the midpoint of the season and then the end of the season. I just want two picks from you, dark horse, and I want winner.
I'm just going to say the dark horse is Detroit because Detroit, so far, they've kind of squeaked out of the playoffs when at times it looked like they might make the playoffs. But I think over time, for the people who are not in Detroit, I think it's sort of they're still in the rebuild stage. We're not going to put much on them. If you look at the rankings for the season, Detroit's probably still ranked around 19th or 20th overall. They have just enough respect, but not much. And so I really think they're the dark horse. And as for who's going to win the Atlantic, I would probably just do the safe bet and bet on, who won it last time.
That was Toronto. You honestly think Toronto's going to come back and win the division? That's interesting.
Here's what I'm thinking. So Toronto has great coaching. It feels like a lot of the smaller, I say smaller, but the players that don't have the big names that they brought in some great players. I feel like chemistry wise, overall, that team is going to be at least as good as it was before, if not a little better. I think the mental state of the team, the drive of that team is going to be a little better. So we'll see how it pans out. But I've been a believer in Toronto. I picked them in the last several years to get to the Cup, and they haven't. But they seem like they've got the pieces. It's really about putting it all together. Unfortunately, the teams that have gotten to the Cup seem to be teams with dominant goaltenders, which Toronto does not have. But they have so much more beyond that. So we'll see how it plays out.
They might now. Anthony Stoller's getting knocked out by an errant elbow to the head last year. Was the only real downturn of their season, and I think he might have made that difference. Joseph Woll is proven himself to be good. We'll see. Anthony Stoller's. I'm definitely a believer, and I do see the Toronto Maple Leafs building this Florida-like angry, will punch you in the face just because you smiled the wrong way team, which seems to be the winning formula for any team that's going to go to the Cup, minus Edmonton for some reason that just seems to skate over everybody.
Well, you talk about the players they have. There's a good reason for that. You make up for it in different ways.
Yeah. And Toronto, I can see, I personally think they're either going to be top of the division or they're going to literally be pushing for a wild card spot. Now, whether or not Toronto does better in the playoffs as a lower seeded team, I mean, that remains to be seen. I believe that's actually plausible. But I'm going to call for the dark horse. I'm going to say it's the Ottawa Senators this year. I'm going to see them pushing up and becoming a real pest. And I think if anyone's going to knock out one of those top three, I think it's going to be Ottawa. And I can see them having a fantastic season where they just surge forward. And for the actual winner, I think it's going to be Florida. That's just, it's hard to bet against them. If I'm going to take a favorite, how do you say it's not Florida? How do you say that is the team that's going to lose?
For me, it's somewhat math and it's also expectations. So, it's just like in boxing when you have a champion. He's been champion for a little bit. Eventually, you just aren't champion, and it's not because you're no longer good. It's just there's a drive that happens when you're getting close and you really want something. Now, maybe with the great coach that Florida has, maybe they can do that. But at least from where I'm sitting, it feels like Toronto's still hungry. They have a lot to prove, and I just feel like they're going to be hungrier. Yeah, that's just my feeling on it.
Yeah, and I liken it to baseball where you get enough times through the lineup and the lineup starts to figure the pitcher out. And I think that people are going to start to figure out the Florida Panthers and how to stifle their approach to winning everything, because it's getting kind of annoying at this point.
Hey, we might finish the season talking about how annoying they are, because they're kind of an annoying team. They're really good. They're really good at just managing the overall game. So, it's going to take something special to break through that, I think.
Yeah, and I think there's going to be a lot of there's going to be a lot of injury along the way for that team. They've pissed a lot of people off. Like they've literally like gone through and taken out the best players of certain teams. They've got snipers on the up in the stands. I swear to God, I think there's going to be a bit more of a reckoning for them. And while the NHL's happy to let it happen, you can see teams like what Tampa did, where Tampa's like, oh yeah, we'll just bring in the most useless but angry player we can to knock the knees out of your guy. That's all we're going to do. We're just going to bring in Sabrin and he's going to destroy everything. Um, there's a lot of people that have accounting with the Florida Panthers. I think it's going to be interesting moving on. Anyways, we're not going to go over all of the other divisions because let's be honest, we're going to put ourselves to sleep. But I do want to know, is there any storylines in the NHL going into day one, which I believe day one was yesterday, but we won't talk about that you're watching this year that you think are going to become pretty big deals?
Well, I mean, look, I'm a Red Wings guy, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing how Brandsteg Nygaard and Axel Sandin Pellikka impact hockey, impact the Detroit Red Wings, because, I mean, from any way you look at it so far, it looks like they could have a really big impact. We're talking about guys that aren't just coming in and doing their jobs. We're talking about guys that can run penalty kill, right? They can run power play. So, these are high level players, it looks like. And so over the season, we're going to find out. We've already seen what happened when they brought in Lucas Raymond, or they brought in other players like Marco Casper, who I think a lot of people were they didn't notice him. They didn't see him. He came under the radar. And now, I mean, he's a solid second line guy. So, yeah, I don't know. I think when you bring these guys in, it's interesting to see how it pans out because they're given big assignments right up front.
I'm personally, and this is like kind of detaching away from like the usual conversations people are having about, you had Connor McDavid sign, you had all that ridiculous $12.5 million a year. I think there's a reckoning coming over the next season of people figuring out what the new cap looks like, because I think we've got two extremes with Minnesota signing $17 million for obviously a player that deserves it, 100% deserves it, but does he deserve 17 million versus Connor McJesus, who literally makes less than Austin Matthews, which we're not getting into the who's better because we know it's Connor. Connor's the best player in the world right now. There's no question about that. And he makes less than Kaprizov. He makes less than Matthews. He makes less. He's not even the highest paid player on his team. And I think this what we're seeing right now is a lot of confusion as the cap is going up as to how percentages of players are going to be kind of. You see some teams making mistakes is probably the best way to put it. I think there's going to be some teams crippling themselves going forward on the Kaprizov deals, on the there's some players holding out for 10 million and they're 3 years in the league, right? Like there's a lot of conversations around the worth of players, and I'm fascinated to see how that plays out by next year. Like fascinated, because I think we're going to see a shift of some of the best teams in the league just based on how poorly did they do paying all of their players. And if you have a team like Detroit's in that spot right now where they don't have those massive contracts to sign right now, they're still a couple years away from having to like meet the Reaper on all of these players that are possibly going to blow up into some of the best players in the league.
Oh yeah.
And there's other teams that got lucky as well that they don't have any major signings. So yeah, I think the whole face of the NHL is going to change over the next couple of years just based on stupidity and race to the puck right now. So yeah,
it's going to change and impact free agency. So we already talked about the Yzer-plan and how free agency was not really a top of list item for him. And the reason is because when you bring in a big player, if they grab a guy like Dylan Cousins or whatever, and they're going to have to pay them, that could be a lot of money. So it's like you have to be careful. It's still a cap, even though it's rising. But like you said, now some teams are going to say, well, the agent came in with this offer. We're going to offer this, but it's still going to be a ton of money. So they're looking at big jumps in salary here. And so, yeah, is that going to be managed well? I guarantee you there are going to be teams that are going to mess this up. They're going to pay one guy too much, and they're going to find out that some of these other players could slip away. So it's going to be a little different. Where it used to be, we don't have enough money. Now we have too much, maybe is the way to look at it. And they won't be able to manage that. When I think there will be some teams that'll figure out how to keep everybody, and it'll just help them stay on top for a while.
Yeah, and then there's other teams swearing at those teams that can keep everybody because you see teams struggle with this stuff like Toronto, and then they see a guy like McDavid sign for so little. You're like, come on, bite
Yeah,
me,
we're all on
McDavid.
McDavid watch, right? I mean, McDavid and Crosby and all these great players that could potentially move at some point. It'll be interesting to see what happens with that because sometimes I think toward the end of people's careers, they're looking at I could finish here, but I could also play for my hometown team. So yeah, it's up to them, I think.
So, in closing, I think the we need to keep the most important stuff for the end, and this one is the burning subject: is who has the best New Jersey this year, because this is I don't know why they do this where they roll out a third jersey and they tried most times they fail miserably at creating compelling jersey wear, something that people are going to buy. This year though saw a couple just blow it out of the water. Now you've seen a few of the new jerseys. Which one kind of struck you as like the best?
Well, that's easy, the Detroit Red Wings, but I think part of it is because it's the centennial, right? Celebration of the team. Also, because when they went to design this thing, they obviously didn't have to worry about, oh, where are we going to draw inspiration from? No, it's the centennial. So, with that in mind, they were able to create a jersey that was one of the most incredible jerseys I've ever seen in the NHL.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to give credit to Detroit for creating something that you're going to want. And I've noticed a lot of discourse about brown gloves. You know, everybody's trying to have that throwback style, and I don't think any team has done it very well. But I do like how Detroit kind of handled it, where it kind of looks throwback, but it's also like an kind of an updated version of. It's something that you know you can buy that jersey and not be ashamed to walk around with it. And they also didn't rely on black. Everybody else going with the black third jersey, that's weak. That's like showing you don't have any design on your side.
Well,
Right.
look, I mean, there's always a go-to, right? But this is where I'm saying I think you could give Detroit a ton of credit, but also this was kind of easy in a way because it's the centennial. So respecting the retro look, but also just updating it a bit. So I don't know. I feel like it was just a perfect. It was a perfect timing for all this. If we look ahead 5 years, I don't know if they pull it off like this.
Yeah. I mean, it all comes down to who is what you're in for. Are you trying to sell the jersey? Are you trying to make a statement with the jersey? Like the new Oilers third jersey, and I'll put them up on the screen after, but the new Oilers third jersey, in my mind, I don't see people buying that. I don't see people rushing out. I see it as a statement jersey. Um, it's a lot better than their old third jersey with that gear that with the oil in the middle. That was just horrible. But you see Detroit, and Detroit's was something that you can see people buying that, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I haven't bought it yet, but I'm planning to because it's pretty damn special. With Detroit already having a great jersey, I don't know if you watched, but I think it was in the last 6 to 7 years, they ran a survey basically of hundreds of journalists and players and all kinds of people asking them what are the best logos in hockey. So they would literally rank them. And Detroit came out on top. And I don't think it's really any accident because there's something about the original six teams when you look at their jerseys. they're all pretty great, right? And so if you're going to have a third jersey, what are the odds that that jersey's going to be good enough where you say, well, I already have these jerseys. I mean, I own three Red Wings jerseys. Why am I going to go out and get the third jersey now? Which should be the fourth in my collection. Why am I going to do that? Why am I going to bother? Well, it's like you said, it's the design of it. It really stands out. It looks like a celebration of Detroit, and it also looks pretty badass.
But and that's the thing. So you've got teams like Detroit who are like they create this kind of throwback, but also a redesign, the winged wheel. It looks amazing. But then you have other teams like the Rangers just went with the Rangers across. You've got Toronto Maple Leafs and Leaf fans. Oh my God. They're like, wow, I really like the crest. The maple leaf looks so good. I don't notice the differences in a freaking maple leaf on the front. Oh, they added a couple new spines. It looks fantastic. Boston did the same thing where they kind of redefined the spoked B, and it's like I don't see the differences in it. I mean, we used a slightly different shade of yellow. We've tweaked it ever so slightly on the edges, and it's like, well, grow up. I mean, try to develop something that's going to blow people away instead of like, okay, well, we just went back to the other maple leaf. And especially with those original six teams, you're not trying to improve on the original. You're trying to redesign and create kind of an emotion around this stuff rather than just like tweak around the edges. Personally.
Yeah, and I think some jerseys lend themselves to that if they would just take the chance. I believe, I mean, my other favorite logo in hockey is Toronto Maple Leaf logo. I think it looks fantastic. It's iconic. I think the Boston Bruins logo looks very, very good. But yeah, the Rangers, when they just put Rangers across the front, I'm not a big fan of that. I don't think it looks that good myself. But
yeah, but
I
let's
don't
put
know.
it on an
It could be
angle.
worse.
I
It
mean,
could be
it
worse.
could be the '70s Vancouver Canucks with a stick and a block. I mean,
Well, I mean, there are logos right now that I'm not a big fan of that I don't think look that good. And I just I look so for me, I would say one of the ones that stand out as just not being very good. I think they could improve upon is the Dallas Stars logo, which I wish they would do that because that team is a heck of a team. They've really built up. They're a force, but the logo is just kind of lazy. It's Dallas Stars. It's a D and a star together, and I
yeah,
like the colors, but I'm not a big fan of that logo.
okay, so we're gonna pack this in. First thing I do have to point out is our teams are meeting up pretty early in the season. Detroit, Toronto. Do you have any like wants, wishes? Do you have any like a bag of like hopes and dreams that you're willing to throw on the ice for those two matchups, or are you just happy to see how the teams clash? Two old division rivals that I always get amped up for this game. Detroit Toronto's never disappointed. And to be perfectly honest, Detroit is one of the few teams that scares the crap out of me because of the youth and the speed. So, what are you looking forward to those games?
Well, really, we didn't dig into this, but we were going to talk about the preseason and why you don't watch. But seeing what already occurred, I would just like to see Detroit be very competitive. I would like those games to be nail biters. I would like to come away feeling like Detroit gave them a good fight or won. Because obviously, on paper, it looks like Toronto's well ahead of them. They've already been working on this team, tweaking it for a long time with the coaching and with the players and trying to get that locker room right. So I just want to see competitive hockey. I want it to feel like, man, Detroit's back. They belong there. Doesn't mean they have to blow the doors off everyone, but they showed up.
Yeah, well, come on. Watching preseason hockey is like foreplay that never pays off. You're watching possibly the future, but you're never actually watching the team in its current form. And most people don't understand the importance of preseason hockey and what you're looking for. So when your team wins or loses, it's not a question of the team lost. It's such an individual performance kind of spectacle. How's Easton Cowan doing this year? How's that new kid that they drafted in the 5th round going to do this year? That's surprising everybody. But people just see the game. And I find like whenever I go to open my mouth about, did you see the game last night? It was a preseason game. Everyone's like, oh my God, did you see they lost? And it's like, yeah, but you missed they were supposed to lose. Teams even have that unspoken arrangement that when they visit your city, you're going to ice a specific team. When they visit your city, they're going to ice a specific team for that reason. It's a chance for the young kids to face off against some of the veterans. Austin Matthews played 2 games. He even told people he was going to do that. I'm only playing 2 games in the preseason.
Oh yeah, no.
Like, what are you watching? Like, to me, it seems like, okay, well, you guys go practice and you let me know when you're ready. And I get that the first game of the year, they're ready. As far as I'm concerned, it's just so little that you can glean from preseason. Now, from a team that's growing, that is basically all youth, yes, you want to watch that. You want to see who's doing it. But a team that's already 7 years into their build, oh, it's painful to watch. It's literally painful and it never ends up being that team that's hitting the ice after the fact. It's all people you can't pronounce their names.
Yeah, there's no doubt because with Detroit, it was which of these prospects are going to make it. They had quite a number of prospects that were on the ice that a lot of people wondered, are they going to make the team? And I already mentioned that Brandstad Nygaard he seemed like the biggest lock. If you're just going to pick one prospect, who's going to make it? One of the questions as well was they had Nate Danielson. And Nate Danielson has been known to be high IQ, a very good competitive player, a good size player. Could he make it? But he ended up getting injured, and so that kind of fizzled a bit. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see him on the ice this year. So it's just a matter of time with him. But when you do have a team that's building like Detroit and they finally have 3 guys making the roster, it's because of that preseason. The coach, the GM, they saw things from those players during that time where they said, you know what? We think they're ready. Because we know from the past that Detroit's been one of those teams that's been really slow to bring a guy up. Really slow. So we're seeing these guys come in, and it's because they're ready.
Yeah, and on the other side of that cup, you've got another team that's like, well, we got a 7th defenseman that we need. Is anybody out? No, okay. And it's literally the same thing, the same guys trying out for the same spots that they're never going to get. It's kind of painful hockey to watch because you're not even watching for a win. You're not watching to see. It's just meaningless. So yeah, I'm a proponent for having shorter preseasons and making the season a little bit longer, which next year, fingers crossed, I believe they're bumping it up by 2 games. So yeah. Anyways, that's it for this episode. Thank you very much, Aaron. We will be back next week, and we're going to recap basically everything that happened for our teams and see where we stand. Thanks a lot, Aaron.
Man, I can't wait for it.